All right. We are live, and I am here with a special guest today, which we'll introduce her a little bit later. So I'm gonna give us, as usual, a minute or so to pop in. I know we're on Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn today, so I'm gonna give you guys a minute to pop in and to say where you're calling from, where you're watching from, what state, what country. And also, I hopefully you guys have come prepared to ask some questions today. So we'll give you guys a minute. So if you're team replay, my word for you as always is if you are watching this and it's after 7 p.m. on Monday, actually 7 p.m. on Thursday Eastern Standard Time, you're watching the replay. So you have to do hashtag team replay. Hi Heather, how are you? Thank you for tuning in. Texas, yay. So Texas is about an hour behind. So you guys, it's 5 p.m. there, right? Hi, Sumit from Boston. How are you? Thank you for tuning in. Hi, Jill from Virginia. Hi, Alex from Chicago. Hi, Nicole from California. Good to see you. Hi, San Antonio. Hi, Utah. Good to have you here. All right, I'm going to give another 30 seconds or so, and then we'll start, and then Team Replay can catch up. All right. Thank you, Heather, so much. Heather's my buddy from high school. Thank you for being here. And Jen is my other buddy, who is actually a moderator on one of my Facebook pages and a very good friend of mine. Hi, Ian from Vancouver. Nice to have you here. Hi, Heather Young from Tennessee. Nice to have you here as well. Celia from Belize, my first international person. Actually, I could say Canada's a little international, but Canada feel like cousins, right? It's just right there. So, hi, Briar, everyone from Texas. Okay, somewhat this LinkedIn user. Hi, guys. So today we have lots to cover. We have Briar Dougherty, and she is a career expert. And so I'm going to go ahead and introduce Briar. Briar, thank you first of all for being here. Briar is a founder and CEO of Career Organic, a professional development company focused on one-on-one coaching, candidate resume writing and bios, and group coaching for professionals across multiple life stages. So everyone here is covered. Hi, Wayne from Clarendon. Now, Wayne's my husband, and he's just goofing off right there. Over the last 2 decades, she has been supporting a global clientele of professionals and entrepreneurs in navigating life and career transitions and identifying opportunities for advancement in their lives, careers, and businesses. She's a mom, a cancer survivor, and a business owner, a coach, leadership expert, well, it's in my mind, and she's active in sharing her expertise with news media outlets and podcasts where she speaks about finding new perspectives to create career momentum and growth, and gives actionable steps and tools to help people to navigate their unique complexities. So welcome, Heather. Welcome, Briar. And we're just so happy to have you here.
Thanks,
and
Sharon.
I want to take my eyes off the comments for a while because I know they're popping in. Sydney, Australia, Hudson Valley, New York. Thank you. Briar, thank you so much for being here. We're so excited to have you and to ask you a ton of questions.
I'm ready.
There's so many questions on my mind between the Great Resignation, career culture, career transitions, corporate culture, team morale. But I do want to start with something that's personal. And just so the audience knows, I did speak with Briar prior to getting on air to ask her if it was okay for me to ask her to speak a little bit about her cancer journey. Not too much, we don't want to discourage and disempower anyone. But there may be someone in the audience who may be recently diagnosed or knows someone who has been. But Briar is sitting here as a survivor, motivated and inspirational for us. And so she's going to share a little bit about her background and a little bit about her journey. So Briar, you have the floor.
Thank you so much. So really quick, I had a great corporate career early on. I was a regional director for a large salon and spa company based in Saks Fifth Avenue at 25. And that was kind of like peak career, everything going really well. And so in 2013, I left corporate America to kind of dabble and get into my own groove and really start to create something of my own. And it was timed when I had my son. And so, I had an amazing first year with him. And when he turned 1, I had felt a lump in my throat. Ended up going to the doctor, and I don't frequent doctors a lot. Things don't really, affect me. I was very, very healthy and very upbeat and worked out a lot. And so went to the doctor. They seemed very concerned. Ended up going for an ultrasound, which also seemed concerned. And so I got a biopsy immediately on the spot. And it came back about 3 days later, which is kind of abnormal for what they said. It was going to be about 7 days to come back. And sometimes they don't know the conclusive results. And it came back extremely conclusive a few days later that I had thyroid cancer. The problem that happened with my cancer and part of my journey was that during the biopsy, it actually exposed the tumor. And the tumor started to leak out into my throat. And so it progressed extremely quickly. And so it went from 3.5 centimeters to about 4.5 centimeters in 4 weeks. So I could feel it growing underneath my collarbone. I could barely turn my neck at the time of surgery. And I had a 1-year-old. We were moving. So it was a really hard time. We were selling our house, and that was the week that we actually found out I had cancer. And so we were living in an extended stay hotel during my surgery. And so I ended up in the ER several days afterwards. And they paralyzed my vocal cord during the surgery. And so the cancer had grown up and down my vocal cord. They had to peel it off, and it completely paralyzed one vocal cord. And so how a vocal cord works is it has to vibrate against each other to create noise. And I could no longer talk. So I literally had no voice. I had to write things down. People had to be very, very close to me to even get an understanding of what I was saying. And so I'm in and out of the hospital with my poor husband and my 1-year-old and him trying to translate things for me. And it was a great growing opportunity for me because you take advantage, you take for granted a lot of the things that you have on a daily basis. And as a coach, my voice is extremely important.
Absolutely.
So it was a complete shift in priorities. And so I opted out of not getting the medical treatment, which is radioactive iodine, which they inject. And because I had been nursing, they said I ran a higher risk of getting breast cancer afterwards in case the radiation went into my mammary glands. So I opted out. And so I completely cleaned up my diet. I don't eat sugar or carbs. I did reintroduce them in 2018 and had cancer recurrence. And so since then, I have had no cancer recurrence, eat very, very healthy, really take care of myself. And that journey for me, number one, made me such a more compassionate coach because people that had gone through these, major traumas in their life, it's hard to meet them at that level. You're compassionate and you care, but there's a level of, hey, you just don't understand what I've been through. Right. And that for me allowed me to have deeper connections with my clients, move them through a lot of their personal issues or traumas or roadblocks, which I didn't have before. And so my cancer journey for me has been super empowering. It's given me tools I would have never had before. It makes me pay attention to my family's health like never before. And it's something that it's just a part of my journey. It's not my whole journey and it's not my whole story. So.
Wow, Briar, I am so thankful and appreciate you sharing such a personal part of your story. I know that you have it on your profile that you are a cancer survivor, and that's why I brought it out. And it's not to start on a damper. I wanted people to see that no matter what you're going through, Briar still, started the career organic, right? She, despite everything, she looked at that as we look at it as a negative, but she looked at it as a growth opportunity for herself, taking things less for granted. And I'm hoping that as we hear Briar's story, that whatever we're going through in our careers, in our lives, in our companies, if if you haven't experienced what Briar has experienced, I am hoping that you're not taking your own journey for granted. So thank you again for sharing that, Briar. I mean, it's very inspiring what you've been able to do. And so now we're going to get into the career part. So tell us about Career Organic, because we want to talk to you about the Great Resignation. We want to talk to you about career transitions. What are you seeing? So a little bit about your company, and then we'll get into some of the questions.
Sure. Career Organic is really based on what I started as a solopreneurship, which was working individually with the holistic professional, right? So the word organic, I know it's like overused nowadays and all of that. It wasn't when I picked it. However, it has very personal meaning to me. It's pulling that organic growth out of someone. So how we approach all of the clients that we work with, and we do, resumes, cover letter, LinkedIn bios, we do career navigation, we do interview prep, comp package negotiations, all of these really cool parts of the journey, and we simplify them. So our goal is to create actionable tools for the clients that we're working with. And how do you create actionable tools? We find what's inside. And then we give them the empowerment or the extra step or even the mirror to see that strength or to see that asset and to kind of get out of their own way. Really, a lot of the roadblocks are within their mind. And so it's feeling like you're trapped, feeling like you're in a box, feeling like you don't have the right skill set to move forward. And so we shine that mirror or that light, and we allow that to come kind of unearthed, right? Like up to the forefront. And then we give them the confidence through the tools and the applications and that practice to really be able to see that they had it within them the entire time. Right. So that's the focus and emphasis of the company, is working with the holistic professional, and we work with a global clientele. So we do work with different cultures. We understand that there's some cultures that are I cultures and we cultures, and how do we speak to them and how do we like evoke the confidence? So that's a little bit about Career Organic.
And I'm glad what you said about mindset, because that's really the basis for me of almost all coaching, right? Is that we have to first unlock people's mind for them to see progress. So now that we've had COVID, right? COVID has really taken over just the way how we do things. And we're hearing this year about the Great Resignation, where people are leaving to become entrepreneurs or they just move on to greener pastures. What are you seeing? And what do you think is causing that? What is causing that shift? I mean, I think this was 11 million people, I think, in the first quarter. I mean, what is causing that shift? And what can employers do, if anything, to retain those employees?
Sure. So I think there's two big pieces to this. Number one is that, and I call it like the career epiphany. So, people have been chugging along and they've liked their job, they've liked their teams, they've liked their company. And it's kind of all just like ambivalent, nothing like hardcore and passionate. And then COVID hit, and they get to see some true colors come out, whether it's their company, whether it's their teammates, whether it's, what their company is doing in the market, right? Like what's their output now? And a lot of people have seen that they want to be more like people focused, human focused. And so if their company or culture is missing that, this career epiphany is, hey, I don't want to be a part of this anymore. And then number two, because the dynamic of having to be in an office and then going completely virtual, some people have had to literally gain an entirely new skill set. I know Zoom, for me, I am a novice Zoom person. I have been doing events in person for years, and I had to get back on the train of like, oh, we're doing global webinars and they're all virtual. And so they have to learn this skill set, and they realize it's not for me. It's not something that's really fulfilling. It's not something I'm passionate about. I do it because it's a job. And so I feel like most people have left or resigned and kind of looking for that greener pasture or going the entrepreneur route are wanting to take advantage of a skill set they never saw before or never had to tap into, or they're avoiding the skill set that no longer fulfills them.
Interesting point with regards to skill set. So I really believe a lot in personal development, right? I coach on that. I believe in that. And when you mentioned Zoom, one of the things that I saw that was a great need this year was executive presence, right? That there were
Yes.
companies who were looking for coaches to coach up their, C-suite and others, leadership, on how to appear on Zoom, like what we're doing right now, how to look professional. And many people take it for granted, but you have to actually work
Yes.
at it, right? We've been on I've been on Zoom calls, and I'm sure there are people out there. We've all been on Zoom calls where the folks on the call, the room is dark. It's there, you can't see their faces, and we take it for granted. But here's the truth: you can be a difference, right? You can make a difference. You can stand out. You can have a unique selling point if you just make little tweaks to your skill sets. Like, for example, learning how to appear properly in Zoom. What are you seeing in terms of employees, transitioning, coming into your agency? What are some of the skills that you're seeing that you're trying to gain or sharpen up? What are you seeing with this trend here? Because now we have a hybrid workplace, we have totally remote workplaces, and I know CEOs are still scrambling to manage the hybrid, manage the remote, and we'll talk about it a little bit more. But from the employee standpoint, what are some of the skill sets that you would say to someone watching today? Hey, based on what I'm seeing, you might want to sharpen up in this particular area to be more competitive.
Yeah, I would definitely say the technology in general is going to be where that's going to fall. So we have the hospitality industry and events industries and entertainment. I work with a lot of producers and people from, news networks and media in general that are like, hey, this is a 5-year deal. Like after that, I don't even know what it's going to look like. Are we going to be, in that or not? And so they're looking at, how do I transfer, say, being in production to being, say, a project manager, right? And so a project management professional, number one, PMP, like a certification,
Yeah.
absolutely necessary to, number one, up level your salary. Number two, negotiate better. And then number three, just to come out on top of other candidates, right? And so
Right.
the skill set on a technology perspective, I work with a lot of student cohorts in General Assembly. In General Assembly, their mission is really to help up level the skill set and make a complete career pivot by doing an immersive program. And these immersive programs are phenomenal if they give the support for those students and those grads afterwards. And so number one would be, what technology and what certifications or immersive programs are going to really pay off financially and competitively against your market competition. And then the soft skills. So the soft skills are a lot of the myths here. And when I work with teams and even other coaches or instructors, it's understanding. So you brought up the Zoom, and I laugh about this because in
Yes.
person, I'm Italian. So like, I talk with my hands. I'm like very energetic. I walk around the class, and I love to interact with the crowd and get that energy. And I noticed on Zoom, it's hard to walk around and get energy because sometimes you can't even see the entire class because they don't all fit on the screen. And you can't necessarily, some people are stone cold, right? You're not getting that physical like vibe from them. And I noticed that is a skill set that a lot of these professionals aren't taking account of either. It's not just the leaders. It's the people that are in the call. So if I'm teaching, or say I am a CEO. So if I'm working with my team and we have a group call to, say go over marketing or something, and someone's like picking their tooth or like playing with their cat, and really not focused on that conversation.
Yeah.
Might not be intentional, but that soft skill of not showing consideration or respect, like those things are so important right now because it is very difficult for the person in the room who is talking, number one, to focus. Because if you see a cat running in front of someone's face, you're like, you want to laugh, or you're human too, right? Just
Right. Absolutely.
title doesn't mean, you have no emotion. And then number two, it's disrespectful for your entire group or student group, any fellowships that I've conducted webinars for, that one person can throw off an entire journey that you're on throughout that hour. or that half hour. And that's the impact that I'm seeing professionals not pay attention to.
Wow. That is not talked about enough. It is not talked about enough. I think people take it for granted that, we're all home. It's okay to have, the cat running all over your hair and your dog walking around. Look, it can happen as an accident. I've had accidents here with my pets, but before I get on a Zoom call, I clear the area. I clear clutter from my desk. Make sure the pets are in another area locked away. And because I have to respect, like you said, the viewer's time, the person who's presenting. If I'm presenting, I don't want them to be distracted by my pet walking around. And I don't think it's talked about enough. And I'm so glad you touched on that from the career aspect, because we are in a hybrid world. We are in a remote world. And the way how we do business and conduct meetings now is this way. So thank you for touching on that. And I just want to say to the audience, you guys, please feel free to post a question for Briar. She's going to be taking questions. So please feel free to post questions, and I'll bring it up on the screen for her. Briar, talk to me about a little bit more to the employers, because I know you work with both. What do they need to do in this hour to create the type of culture that fits this time that we're in? Because that's another thing I'm seeing out there in the airwaves and in the media, that culture is a really big story. Yeah. And so companies are looking at their current culture because their brick and mortar culture is just not working anymore. What are some of the tips you could give to companies who are, having to rethink their strategy?
Yeah, I would say first and foremost, setting expectations with every single level. And I don't think this happens enough. And this is something that I do in my organization, because our interns, they all have expectations. There is an open door policy, but we have to empower them to walk through that door, because one disgruntled intern could tank my entire marketing department and their morale. One disgruntled manager could ruin the team morale below them and make all the senior managers above them miserable. So the thought that it is an entire team is fantastic, but we also have to realize that it could take one person. So if we're not paying attention to those details and setting clear expectations up front with how do we escalate? What is an escalation? How are you allowed to feel at work? And not from like an emotional perspective of like, you're not allowed to be angry or anything like that, but what deserves a conversation? Because what I find that hurts a lot of CEOs and a lot of organizations at the top is that they don't take the time to either survey, right? So like survey their employees and get that feedback. They're so afraid of getting the feedback because you're going to have to take action, right? And then it's, well, what action do we take? We absolutely have to understand that there are always going to be shortfalls. No one knows everything. And so each individual culture within an organization is going to be different. So each team. And so starting from the bottom up, I think there has to be a clear trajectory of who do you go to? Where's the safe space? What would result in, a conversation? And how do we empower them to feel comfortable doing that? Because we can't tell them. We have to make them feel it. And I don't think enough companies do that at the top. They say, we have these initiatives, we have these programs, we have the ability to, walk through the door. So I don't understand why people aren't doing it. It's like, I'm not going to walk through your door if that's how you speak to everybody. Your door, while it's wide open, is closed to me. And I feel like that's the pain point that no one's really addressing. And how do you overcome that? You survey and you make sure that you have boots on the ground listening to these things.
Mm-hmm. You made a point about leaders not being comfortable with feedback. And I've seen this as well. I like the 365 survey. And a lot of leaders and managers really do not like it because they don't want to hear, all the truth. And yes, there's some outliers. There's going to be that individual, that employee who has a beef and may say something, that's unfair. But for the most part, with a 365 survey, being surveyed from top and from bottom sides, you get to see a real picture of how you're perceived. And it's very, very helpful. Culture really is, is how we do things. That's what culture means. How we do things in our organization. What are the norms? Um, do we have coffee Friday? Do we have breakfast Monday? Like Briar said, what's the escalation point? What's the chain of command for? How do you handle complaints? Managers, do you walk around? Do you sit in your office? Is open door, but your back is turned to the door? What is it? And
Right.
these are the kind of things that I think employees are now saying, enough. We don't have to take it anymore. We're going to go try on our own. And my appeal to managers and leaders is you can still avert this, but you have to be courageous and brave. You have to look at your current culture, look at your current, systems, look at your technology, look at your training track, and you have to level up. Because we're in COVID still, and because we have a hybrid workplace, doesn't mean that we level down. That was a mistake that people made. Like, we don't, employees made it and employers made it. It doesn't mean that you're going to show up in your pajamas on Zoom. You don't level down, you level up.
Right.
And managers, you have to level up as well. So,
well, and sorry
go
to
ahead.
interrupt, but you had mentioned technology, and I think a big piece of the leveling down is communication. And so we have all of these tools, right? So we have Slack and Yammer and all these different like communication amazing tools that we're able to utilize, and no one's leading the charge on, well, like we have a document in our company where anybody that comes in, this is how we communicate. This is why we use email, and this is what a good format of email is. I actually even have a format where if we're emailing with a client and they put something in the subject, it's like when we're replying with an update or something, we should change that title of the email so we are being user friendly, customer service friendly, client friendly, so that if they can search, they know what they're looking for. That communication is seamless. And I mean, it's those little details that make a huge difference, because we're cutting down the time investment it takes to get an answer or to understand where we go for the answer. And when people have to waste time, you're going to get resentment very quickly.
I'm glad you touched on email. And remember, folks, if you have a question for Briar or for myself, please feel free to post it in the comments and we will ask it. So Brian mentioned email and email protocols, and it sounds like silly, or it may sound like, okay, email, but we're emailing more now because we're home. We're communicating more now, whether we're using Slack or other, methods. Your communication skills, that soft skill, it's time to level that up as well. And this is what I'm seeing too. I'm seeing where LinkedIn had actually foreseen this 3 years ago, when the guy who runs LinkedIn, when he said, listen, these are going to be the skills needed for the next 3 years. He mentioned communication, and there were some other soft skills, that those were going to be the important skills. This is before the pandemic happened. And now with the pandemic, this is what we're saying, that employees, you need to also level up, because even if you go to another company, and Brian can talk about that, even if you go to another company, you're going to have to come with skill sets. And I say this to employees in this era, and Brian, you work internationally. Your competitor now, as I said on another program, is no longer the person in your neighborhood or in your geographic area. Your competitor now is an international competitor, because we can hire, maybe for less money, someone as qualified or more in a different country. So your competitor is no longer just the people in your country. Your competitor now is the people of the world.
Yep.
So sharpening your skills is so important. And I hope you guys are really hearing this. The folks who are leaving, right, the Great Resignation, are they all trying to be entrepreneurs, or are they trying to get rehired somewhere else? What is the mix that you're seeing for the
I
most
see three things. One is the entrepreneur track. I work with a lot of them actually, and redefining what corporate was for them and what skill sets they're taking to launch their own thing. Two is just I'm over that company and that culture and I want something better, or I want something completely different and I want to try it out. And so they're leaving and going to companies where the culture is more important or emphasized. And 3 is the parent that has finally said, hey, I don't have to work 80 hours a week. I could work a 20-hour a week position from my home and not pay childcare. A lot of parents, unfortunately, and I'm a parent, and I'm homeschooling my children, and my husband and I have rotating schedules for our work. And so from that perspective, it's like someone at school gets COVID, well, the daycare shuts down.
Right.
Or babysitter can't show up because grandma has, something going on and she can't risk something happening, right? So like there are all these contingencies for parents right now. And I think, and I hope, and because I advocate for this a lot, is, moms and dads, they don't have to feel obligated anymore if they can financially support themselves on less hours. We don't all have to be 60 to 80 hour workers, right? There's a limit. And I think COVID, having that time back with children, having that time back with family, has allowed people to see what truly fulfills them. And I want to empower them to, because there's only a movement that I've seen that's like, we have to empower moms to get back into the workforce. And I'm all about that. And I want to empower moms, but I also want to empower the moms that are like, I'm okay. I'm enjoying it. Like, I'm enjoying my momhood again. I feel good with my kids, or I only want to work 15 hours a week and I want to do that virtually.
And that's right. That's so there are 3 buckets, like you said, the entrepreneur bucket. I've seen those. Our organization, Sharon Gill International, we work a lot with leaders and organizations, but we also work with entrepreneurs as well. And so we're seeing that. As a matter of fact, I'm going to have my assistant drop a link into the comments, because we are kicking off a boot camp for entrepreneurs, for startups, 3 months, how to start it right. My husband and partner is an attorney, business attorney. So we want to help them start it right, because they're flocking to entrepreneurism, not realizing that they're going to become tomorrow's bosses.
Yes.
And the very things that you're leaving, the culture that they're leaving, they're going to have to learn to create their own culture if they're going to be hiring as well. And so, we're kicking off this boot camp to help them, with the right structure, the right corporate, structure, mission, vision, values, branding, and a whole host of stuff. So that kicks off actually on Monday night. So the buckets are on the entrepreneur bucket, the other company bucket, and employers, they are leaving you because of culture to go to another company that has a better perceived culture, because I don't really know yet. So you can literally retain your employees by just leveling up your culture. And for those moms who don't want to work 60 hours a week, you could still have the benefit of getting great talent for 15 hours a week. And it's a win-win for everyone. And so, I just wanted to put that out there. And again, if you guys have any questions for Briar, please type into the comments. I'm just enjoying this. One more question from me, Briar.
Yeah.
Team morale, right? Which really ties into the whole team culture. When folks sit with you and they, are coaching with you one-on-one about your career transition, and I'm sure they talk about and they complain about, the morale of where they were coming from, right? What are you hearing? Like, what's a universal theme? Because that's another big thing that I see when I poll. It's the morale.
Yeah.
So
yeah, there's 2 things I hear a lot. One is, I don't feel heard. That literally, that line is verbatim what I hear. I don't feel heard on my team. And typically that's because there's a kind of like, you're extrovert, which is great. But you have typically, I'm one of those, right? So like I take lead on like everything I do. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And so what happens is that if you're not listening, right? And listening is, I always go back to communication, but listening is such a big player when it comes to team morale and just working with teams in general. Mm-hmm. And so if someone doesn't feel heard, it means that either their ideas aren't being validated, right? So it's a hard no versus a, can you explain why that was your suggestion, right? So there's no dialogue being opened.
Mhm.
Okay. So that's one. And that kills, I mean, immediately, because I feel ashamed to bring something up. I don't want to bring something up. When I went behind their back and went to the supervisor, they just kicked me back down to the team. Does this make sense? So really it feels like you're in a box and you don't want to work anymore. You don't want to talk. You don't want to bring anything up. And then the other one, kind of from a team morale perspective, is you love the team, but you've hit a glass ceiling.
Yeah.
And so everybody starts feeling complacent, and then that little itch gets through the talking point, and now everybody's bickering about where they are in the company. Everybody likes each other and supports each other, but that gets old really quickly. You want to go into work and you want to enjoy yourself. You want it to be your second family. Like you could talk about your ups and downs, but there have to be ups. Like you did a very good job in the beginning of our conversation. It was like, hey, I know we're starting off talking about cancer, but like we want to use that as a motivator, not as a downer.
Right.
And when I talk about it, I don't look at it as a downer. It's an upper. It's something that's going to motivate and steam and propel. And that's what has to happen on the team side as well. Is it takes one person to say, hey, I don't think we're paid enough, and then I don't think so either. And I don't think so either. And then all of a sudden there's a team filled with resentment who can't take action, can't have good conversation, can't open it up. And it becomes just emotional and not tactical. It's not approached from, hey, this is the business value we're bringing. What can be done here? And that's where we lose teams.
Interesting. It's so true. Someone, Mikey or Mikey, I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing your name wrong, but they wanted to know, they're from Sweden, and they wanted to know, does the same rule apply? Are you seeing dads as well?
When I said it, I actually said parents.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
I said parents specifically because I do have dads that are stay at home, like have left corporate America. I have a couple of clients, really cool clients right now, where they log out at like 3:00 because they take over for their wife or partner, or their husband, to help with the kids. And I love seeing that. So no, I actually specifically said parents because it is both sides. And I even work with an organization called the Mom Project. And I always tell them, I'm like, I love the Mom Project, but like, we don't have dad written anywhere. And I work with dads a lot. So yes, it is both sides of the coin.
Very interesting. All right, so we have a few moments left. And so if you have a question for Briar or for myself, please post in the comments. Again, I want to speak directly to employers, because a lot of these issues are avoidable.
Yes.
It's just a tweak in your culture, in your communication. As Briar pointed out, if people begin to bicker and to be, just one tiny thread gets in, and now we have a despondent team. A despondent team is going to be giving you 40% output of the work. So you're paying for 100%, but they're giving you 40%. And this is really falls on the leadership, because you need to be checking in with your team, serving your team, manage by walking around. Now we're not walking around anymore, but manage more by Zoom. That's where you as leaders have to really come up. I'm going to manage 2 retail sites a week when we were open from a 4-month lockdown. For my sales team, working from home isn't an option because we're a brick and mortar store. Do you have any advice for how to ensure their transition from lockdown back into the workplace is a smooth transition? I'm preparing them virtual as much as I can at the moment, but retail after 4 months of being shut down is going to boom. And I know the first week or two, they're exhausting to everyone. This is a very good question.
Yeah.
And the bottom got cut off, but
I actually have some ideas for this.
Yes, it's a very good question, Eloise. Let's hear what Brian has to say, because I have a follow-up on that as well.
Perfect. So one would be to set up those communication tools. So whether it's like at the end of the week or the beginning of the week, understanding what were those high points, what were those low points, what are the stressors The additional piece is that, yes, it's going to be booming. And so this means physical exhaustion, right? You go from working virtually and not really moving a lot to being in a retail store where you are hustling, you're restocking shelves, you're working with customers, you're, getting the complaints and the Karens coming in, all of that fun stuff. And that is an emotional and physical toll. And so setting up some stations within the facility itself where they're allowed to take that 5-minute, hey, this is like your relaxation, place, or even like a whiteboard or a chalkboard of some sort where like there is something they can drop and like release that emotion onto something where it's not onto a person, because that can get very awful very quickly. And so those release points and those relaxation points, and making sure that that is set up for them and it is highly communicated and advocated and championed for them, will at least allow them to, number one, feel heard, because they have to feel heard going back, and need to be able to pivot with that. And then two, having outlets already set up for them so they're not craving and feeling, again, not heard, or not being able to release any of that tension, and they're taking that home, which is going to create a whole trickle down kind of domino effect negatively over the course of that, first few months.
Eloise, I don't want to scare you, but I had a gentleman on the show a month or so ago. And so he had he works in printing. And so the folks had to come back to the print shop. And then he lost a couple of them not too long afterwards. But he made some missteps. One of the things I'm going to advise you, Eloise, is that I don't know if you're the owner, but if you have managers, they need to be trained on how to work in this hybrid environment. The old manager playbook does not work anymore. It doesn't. The expectation of the punching in the clock and all this stuff, the draconian measures, it does not work. And I know some managers are bristling. Their leaders bristling at what they consider to be employees taking advantage of the situation. But employees' mindset, just like yours, have been forever shifted. They have tasted what being at home feels like. They have tasted stepping away from the grind. And so if you have the old mindset of here's how we do things and it's draconian top down, it's not going to work. What Briar says, having those stations, I would, having those relaxation points, having an opportunity. I think you can use this opportunity, Eloise, to really create something wonderful in the brick and mortar by really slicing in those take a breath moment. I even know of folks bringing in stress managers now back into the organizations to do breathing exercises. And it sounds silly, but you have to stay ahead of this, this new situation. And you as an employer have to truly adjust your mindset as well. Go above and beyond. Remember, we can't duplicate or replicate what they had at home, but to the best of your abilities, we got to create all those safe spaces. We don't know how they're going to react coming back to a very hectic retail environment. And you have to anticipate potentially them quitting. But you can offset that, I think, or the numbers by a lot of communication. The gentleman I had on before, he wasn't communicating enough. Unfortunately, he wasn't mindset prepared for the post-COVID world and was operating as a pre-COVID manager. You have to be mentally prepared, Eloise, that people are going to feel like, I don't want to do this. And you're going to have to be having a lot of conversations, a lot of touch points, a lot of touchy-feely, and your managers have to be the same as well. So,
and can I say one more thing to that point is everything that you do set up, make sure that it's sustainable.
Yeah.
So like if you're not going to do Danishes every day, don't bring Danishes in. Set the expectation that these are always going to be there. These are places that are always going to have the same outcome, because if you don't set up that consistency, that's also going to breed resentment.
That's an exceptional point, because you can't take back a benefit. If you're in HR, you cannot take back a benefit. Once you give it, it's an expectation. Now you have to actually, there's more expectation after that.
Right.
So if you can't afford day dishes every Friday, don't start it. But you should start something.
Right, right.
You've got to start something. Even, the dress code, you got to be a little bit more relaxed. I'm one for getting dressed up. I dress up on Zoom every day. But in the real world, you got to do what makes it easier for your folks. And Eloise, everything, as Maxwell says, rises and falls on the leader. So it's going to be you wearing that heavy crown, you having to be more strategic, more of a visionary, looking down. If COVID continues for the next year or two, this is not going to let up. And how do you create that new culture for your environment? Because I believe that you can win in it, but you have to be smart. One more question for Briar before we go. We went a little bit longer today because she's such an interesting guest. So one more question for Briar. Thank you so much, Eloise, for your question. One more question for Brian, and then I'll have Briar do a closing point. And as I mentioned, leaders, if you are watching and you are a leader or a manager, DM us, because we at our company, Sharon Gill International, we work with you to help you create a better culture. We help you to, develop your team and to get your team to buy into what you're doing, because that's another thing too. People are not trusting leaders, so you have to have buy-in. And we walk with you to show you how to get that buy-in, how to integrate your team in the decision-making processes so that they could have buy-in. We work with you to develop your executive presence and how to lead in this new era, because it is different. There is one question from Laura Lee, I think. Speak to the difference and of the way it was to now. Your staff will tell you what works for them. Make it fun. Okay, Laura Lee was giving some advice. Speak to the difference and of the way it was to now. So that's for Eloise. Eloise, when your staff comes back to work, you want to say, here's how it was prior to COVID and how we used to do things. And while we maintain our mission and our, our vision and our, all of those core values, we realize that we're in different times. A lot of communication, Eloise, a lot of communication. And so here's how, we are planning to do things. And we love your input. Eloise, say that. I tell this to leaders when I coach all the time. Please don't be a dictator.
Right.
Get your people involved. Always say and mean, we love your input, because when they are part of the decision-making process, they buy in. You come up with something, they'll nod along, but they have no heart involvement. And that's really what we coach when we coach these leaders. All right, so I'm going to give the last word to Miss Briar here. Any closing comments? Briar, we're so glad you came and you shared your story, and we're so glad to see you doing so well. And Briar's company is Career Organic. And Briar, who is your ideal client really for your organization? Who's your ideal client?
Sure. So it's easier to tell us who our not ideal client is. And that's the professional who wants to make excuses for their growth or their lack of growth. So we literally work with students from high school all the way to the corporate exec who wants to leave corporate America, or at least like devise that, say, 3-year exit strategy. And our bread and butter is working with, professional level director, executive, resume writing, getting the LinkedIn up together, understanding their narrative. How do you go to market and leverage that amazing network that you have? Yeah. That's really where we shine, because we are storytellers. We want to make sure that we're able to, take what was the skill set before and not validate that you're running away from it. We want to bring it with you. We want our clients to embrace that no matter what industry, what they were doing before, that's all cumulative knowledge and skill set that is going to catapult their success in the future if they utilize it and embrace that it belongs. So that's a huge part of what we do with our clients, and who we're looking to work with is people that are growth mindset, want to succeed. They don't have to know what they're going to do next. We can absolutely figure that out with them. And professionals that love to collaborate with individuals and teams that just love what they do, because everybody at Career Organic loves what they do. But my closing remark would really be, as a leader myself, I was a general manager at the age of 20. And so I couldn't even legally go to my holiday party without a fake ID. And so being in that role, I look back at the young me, and the one thing that I will say that changed my trajectory was always being open to input, always hearing the negative and saying it's not negative. It's feedback, it's data, it's data points that I can take and I can grow on. And that is how I've seen every single obstacle in my career, as a data point that I can utilize. And without it, I wouldn't have made the decisions I've made. I wouldn't have had the successes, and I wouldn't have had the love and joy that I have in every single day of my life when it comes to work.
That's awesome. That's so beautiful, Simon. Career Organic is very easy. That's the website is on the link here, careerorganic.com. It's very easy to remember. And I'll just say, Briar works with high school and above, right? And so if you have a high schooler and they're trying to think about that career, give her a call. That's her website. And I would say for us, I'm very partial to the leaders. I know what your issues are, and there are some, but I am very partial to the leaders, and that's why our organization at SharonGill.com, that is why we exist, to help you, a leader, become a better leader, to become more inclusive, more communicative, more a leader who is, and Brian mentioned closed mindset. It has a more open mindset, because I'm finding leaders are really struggling with this change. And when we see people like Morgan Stanley have to retract what they were saying behind the scenes about people being home, and we know leaders are really struggling. So we at Sharon Gill, I'm floating here at the bottom, SharonGill.com, give us a call, because that's our area of expertise, working with leaders and organizations, helping them to change their culture, look at their mission again, revisit their mission statement, train up their leaders, and helping them to really create that environment where their team thrives. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching. We loved having you here. You guys were very gracious. And we just thank you. We thank Briar for her sharing her personal story and for all the advice she gave today. We'd love to have you back again, Briar. But for now, we're just going to say bye to everyone. And thank you guys for tuning in.
Thank you so much. Bye, everyone.